So get this. We're building machines that can, well, literally read our minds, that can write new instructions directly into our brain tissue. It sounds like pure science fiction, but it's happening right now. And it brings up a seriously mind-bending question. What happens when the observer is in the machine?
Just let that sink in for a minute. A third party in my head. And that's not, some poetic metaphor. That is the actual real-world experience of a person whose sense of self, their core identity, is now kind of co-piloted by a piece of technology.
Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking the biggest hurdles here are all technical, right? Better chips, smarter algorithms, that kind of thing. But that's not the whole story. Turns out, the toughest problems we're facing are ancient. They're philosophical questions about what it even means to be a person. And to really wrap our heads around the risks of this new tech, we've actually got to go back, like way back, to a philosophical problem that's been tying thinkers in knots for centuries. Okay, so there's this thing called the problem of induction. The philosopher David Hume pointed out something that sounds really simple but is actually profound. No matter how many white swans you see, 1,000,000, a billion, whatever, you can never logically prove that the next swan you see won't be black. That final step, it's always a leap of faith. Your conclusion always goes beyond the evidence you actually have.
Right, so swans, brain implants. What's the connection? Well, it turns out it's everything. Because when you're talking about rewiring someone's actual mind, that little philosophical leap of faith suddenly becomes a massive, potentially dangerous chasm.
And this is where we get to something ethicists call inductive risk. Here's how it works. You start with a simple premise. A new neural implant seems totally safe and effective in a short-term trial. So you make an inference. Great, it'll be safe for that person's entire lifetime. But that inference, that leap, it might be dead wrong. And the risk? Oh, it's huge. We're talking unforeseen personality changes or a company going bankrupt and leaving you with a useless, unsupported piece of hardware permanently stuck in your brain. So this all leads to a massive question for all of us. If our old ways of doing science and testing things aren't quite cutting it, how do we properly evaluate a technology that isn't just making a new gadget, but is literally rewriting what it means to be human? The good news is we are not starting from zero here. The philosophy of science actually gives us a really powerful toolkit for this exact problem. Think of it like a philosopher's toolkit. And we're going to pull out 3 specific lenses from 3 heavy hitters of 20th century thought: Karl Popper, Thomas Kuhn, and Imre Lakatos. First up in our toolkit, we've got Karl Popper. For him, a theory was only properly scientific if you could try to break it. The whole point of science for Popper wasn't to prove yourself right, but to try your absolute hardest to prove yourself wrong. That's how we actually learn things and make progress. Okay, next lens, Thomas Kuhn. His big idea was that science normally operates inside these accepted frameworks he called paradigms. Most of the time, scientists are just solving puzzles inside that box. But every now and then, so many weird results pile up that the old rules just can't explain them. And boom, you get what Kuhn called a paradigm shift, a full-blown scientific revolution. And for our third and final tool, we're turning to Imre Lakatos, who kind of mashed Popper and Kuhn's ideas together in a really smart way. He said we shouldn't judge one-off theories, but entire research programs. Is the research making cool, novel predictions that pan out? Awesome. That's what he called a progressive program. Or is it just playing defense, constantly patching up holes in its old theories? Well, that's a degenerating program. It's a field that's basically dying. Okay, so we've got our toolkit, Popper, Kuhn, Lakatos. Now for the really interesting part. Let's put these philosophical lenses to work and see what they show us about the wild world of neurotechnology. So let's start with lens number 1, Karl Popper, the falsifier. He'd tell us to ignore the hype and start with the most fundamental question there is. Can we even trust the data we're getting from inside the human skull? And right away, looking through Popper's lens, we see a couple of huge cracks in the foundation of some neuroscience research. First, there's this thing called the reverse inference fallacy. That's when we see a brain region light up, and we jump to the conclusion that the person must be feeling, say, fear. But that same region might light up for a dozen other reasons. It makes the theory really hard to prove wrong. Then you've got the intervention realism gap. Zapping a brain in a sterile lab might tell you something, but it's a huge leap to say that's how a brain works in the messy, chaotic, real world. For Popper, if you can't really disprove a theory, it's not very good science. All right, let's swap out our Popper lens for our Kuhn lens. Now the question gets much, much bigger. Kuhn would look at all this and ask a more unsettling question. Is the whole way we think about the brain, our entire paradigm, starting to break? So on the one hand, you've got the standard view, what Kuhn would call normal science. The brain is a machine, the implant is a tool to fix it. Pretty straightforward. But then you get these anomalies, these weird data points that just don't fit the model. Patients aren't saying my machine is fixed, they're reporting feelings of self-estrangement or saying things like, I miss being me. They talk about distributed agency, like their sense of control is now shared with the device. For Kuhn, these aren't just minor side effects, they're cracks in the foundation of the whole paradigm.
And this brings us to a huge, really Kuhnian question. Are these experiences just bugs we need to patch, or are they signals that our entire scientific model of what a self even is fundamentally wrong and needs a revolution? Okay, time for our final lens, Imre Lakatos. He'd tell us, hey, stop looking at the tiny details for a second. Zoom out. Look at the entire research program over years, even decades. Is it actually pushing forward, or is it just spinning its wheels? In this timeline here, this is a perfect and frankly heartbreaking example of what a degenerating research program looks like in the real world. A company launches with big, bold promises, but then it spends years just trying to fix bugs and make little adjustments instead of making any new discoveries. Eventually, the company folds, and the patient, they're left abandoned, with obsolete tech in their head that no one knows how to support. For Lakatos, this isn't just a corporate failure. This is a scientific failure, full stop. So after looking through all three of these lenses, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it shows us that this isn't just some abstract academic debate. It forces us to completely rethink what scientific progress even means in the first place. Because it really comes down to this. When you are developing technology that can fundamentally alter the human mind, good science can't just be about getting good data. It has to be about taking on a profound sense of responsibility. So what does this new kind of good science actually look like? Well, first, it means patient welfare isn't an afterthought. It's built into the research design from day one. It means admitting that our values, our ethics, always shape the kinds of questions we ask. It means seeing an ethical failure, like abandoning patients, as a sign of scientific failure. And it absolutely demands radical transparency, especially when private companies and university labs are working together. And really, when you see it all laid out like this, it becomes so clear that philosophy isn't just some dusty academic thing we do for fun. When you're building technology that can rewrite what it means to be human, philosophy is not an optional extra. It is the essential instruction manual. Which leaves us with one final massive question to chew on. We are right now learning to rewrite the very code of the human brain. The question is, are we brave enough to rewrite the rules of science itself to make sure we do it responsibly?